The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest today is Mayor Ian Boddy of the city of Owen Sound. Always a welcome face here on Politically Speaking. Ian, good to see you. Good to be here. Now, the weather has changed. Last time, I think we had one of my more recent emails from the city was about a severe weather emergency, but it's raining, not snowing today. So we're getting there. We're getting to spring.
I wonder if there's any correlation with me going on to your show that we're drawing bad weather.
I'm sure that as a politician, that's not a correlation you would like to make, and I won't.
Hey, the best part is it's raining today. Hopefully we don't get the freezing rain that they're threatening over the next couple of days, and we don't have to plow this stuff. We might have to put down some sand on hills, but hopefully we don't have to.
And I'm sure that the city is well prepared.
Yeah, they will be. They always are.
Speaking of which, speaking of Public Works, we've got a new acting director of Public Works and Engineering who is not unfamiliar to the city.
Yeah, we're unfortunately seeing Dennis Gafalis retiring. He's been here for, I think, 4 years. Looked after the 10th Street Bridge, which was huge. He's got family property out in the East Coast that he's going to retire to and move out there. Mike Crone was around the head of the Works Department, or head of, I think, Works several years ago, I think 12 or 14 years ago. Went to Bruce Power, and we're happy to have him back on a temporary basis over the next few months.
Now, my understanding is that he is acting, but that they'll be not be doing a job advertising immediately. Is that right?
Technically, council only has one employee, and that is the city manager, and then the city manager is responsible for hiring all staff. So, just to clarify that. Tim has a plan that to go through the process of filling that role, and we'll proceed in coming days, weeks, months.
Yeah, but doesn't there something related to the role revision or the reassessment of staff that the study that's being undertaken?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Council chose to. We've got federal funds or provincial funds to modernize, and we were able to do a service review. So we did a service review 5 or 6 years ago. We did it internally with staff. This time we will go to an outside agency to have a look at all the jobs at City Hall, the efficiencies, the costs, and make recommendations of ways to do it more efficiently and perhaps less expensively.
Sure, and I presume that after that gets done, that's when we'll look at a new director.
Yeah, that'll be part of the process. For sure.
Sure. It's also not unusual that someone is appointed acting, because I know when the fire chief retired, that was exactly the same process. There was actually a former member of the fire department who stepped in as an acting fire chief. And so this is not an uncommon process.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thinking back several years ago, before we had Dennis and before we had Ken Becking, we had a few went through that job that were acting, some of them a couple of days a week. And, it used to be difficult to hire staff in the city of Owen Sound. And over the last number of years, we've turned that around, and we're seeing people applying from all over when the job openings do come up. So once we make that decision, we'll be, I think, in good shape to be able to hire somebody.
It's interesting you should mention that, Ian, because on this show, I do interview a number of obviously elected officials, but they're also very pleased to introduce some of the staff, county staff. I know Georgian Bluffs, Meaford have all introduced staff members to the public. And it's interesting to hear some of the background of some of these staff people. They are very, very experienced. They want to come here. They're looking forward to being here, and so it's certainly a tribute to all of the municipalities that hey, it's Owen Sound where you want to live, but hey, there's a lot of other places too that people want to come to.
Yeah, exactly. The last one I would have introduced on here would have been our city manager, Tim Simmons, that by this May will be coming up to completing 2 years already, and it's certainly been a blur with COVID and everything else going on. And there's an example of somebody quite accomplished that wanted to live in the area and wanted the job, and well, we've certainly benefited from that.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Excuse me. And speaking of COVID-19, the city has lifted its state of emergency. Is this a sign of better things to come?
Well, we certainly hope so. We're following the province, following the county, and in discussions with Dr. Era, he felt that this is a good time. Of course, you declare an emergency when there's a chance that your services are going to become overwhelmed with, in this case, patients or people catching COVID and becoming ill. And we're at a point now that we're pretty confident that our services can handle a spike if we do get a spike, and some of the waves that will come. It is interesting. I know there's going to be people that are more comfortable continuing to wear masks at grocery stores, hockey games, those big events. And I'm even seeing at my law office people that are still coming in wearing a mask, and that's what they're comfortable with. So we will see masks continue with some people and maybe not with others. And I just hope that everyone will be respectful of everyone else's choices that they're making and what they're comfortable with.
Yes, indeed. I mean, in the last week, since the mask mandate was lifted, I've been in a drugstore, for example, and everyone was masked. Wasn't required, but they were masked. Grocery store, same thing. But I was in another setting, and everyone was no. There was no. I guess there was one or two people that were masked, and that was it. So it really is a choice at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, I go to Owen Sound Fitness, and at the gym, there's people that. You can't wear a mask when I guess you could. You don't have to wear a mask when you're working out under the rules, but when you're moving from equipment to equipment, sort of mingling through people, they wanted you wearing a mask over the past. And as of this week when I've been in, again, there's some people that are wearing and some that aren't, and it's just what they're comfortable with. There's many that aren't wearing, but they're also sitting on the apparatuses and the equipment working out. So, it makes sense that they don't have to wear them at that moment.
And let's hope that our local businesses will be seeing an uptick in attendance. I'm thinking of the restaurants, for example, but other businesses as well, as we begin to move out of the time we have been through.
Yeah, and I think we relaxed, the province relaxed some of the requirements about a year ago going into springtime, and we had a pretty good season through the summer, as I recall. Though it's funny when you're into sort of a limited routine, how things blur from one month to the next as to being able to identify sort of the time periods through this COVID, but. We're heading into spring again. People can get outdoors, walk, bicycle, outdoor patios coming soon, those types of things. So, it's a good time to be lifting the limitations and the requirements.
Speaking of outdoor patios, well, obviously you can't speak for council. Will we be seeing similar regulations around the outdoor patios this coming summer that we've had in the last 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think we probably developed that. Some of the patios that go up on Main Street, once people have invested in the the infrastructure, the wood, sort of the tables and all those things, I think we'll see that continue to happen. I think it added great character to downtown and to different places that were able to have patios that maybe wouldn't have thought about it before. Main Street right now, or as we call it, the River District, being the whole downtown area, is down to about 11.5% vacancy of stores, which is pretty darn good. We've always ebbed and flowed, and when you think that we're coming out of COVID, I think that is a real statement, a real positive statement about our businesses in Owen Sound that have adapted and changed and did what they could do to keep their doors open through COVID and keep attracting people, things like outdoor patios in the summer. And I think it's a real feather in the cap for the citizens of the community, being, the general area that supported local businesses and kept them going through this. So, I'm really looking forward to the future days coming forward.
And I also noticed a few new businesses that are beginning to open. Places that had closed during COVID have got new names hanging over the front door, which is kind of interesting and very exciting.
Yeah, our economy's in good shape, and certainly, we've seen. I think I counted just under 400 new residential units that will be coming onto the market in the coming months in Owen Sound. So that's people moving here, maybe moving out of their houses, 3 and 4 bedroom houses, moving into apartments and things, and downsizing as they age. And more people moving up here into some of those residences, which of course, the more people live here, the more they're supporting local business and farmers market and galleries and little theater and all those things. So we should be, new businesses and new people. We should be, hopefully this is good for the next couple of years.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Ian. I was in our local medical lab, and I was talking to the technician, and not someone who I'd recognized before, but turns out that the technician told me that just moved up from Toronto, and we got into quite a conversation about what kind of a car they should have, because the technician was finding they really need 4-wheel drive because of the snow. So we are seeing new people who are showing, and this was a young person, which is even more exciting.
And the next step we're going to, speaking of medical, the next step we're going to have to work on in the next couple of years, of course, is doctor recruitment too, for expanding community and, some of the doctors age and retire. So that's another thing that will be on the agenda.
Now, I noticed in the last agenda of City Council, there was a letter from the physicians, I believe, expressing, I won't say concern, but expressing interest in the whole area of medical recruitment. And I know 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that was a huge issue here. But is it back on the agenda?
Yes, and that's in the last 15 years, it's changed quite a bit, where the hospital used to have really family practitioners as well as specialists. The hospital has got their own program for attracting the specialists that they need at the hospital, the surgeons, the oncologists, et cetera. The family health team is where we will need help, and of course they've separated out. So Tim Simmons and I, approximately a year ago, started to have a conversation with the family health team organization. And then more recently, we've got a letter from the doctors of the family health team, which is a slightly different, they're part of the family health team organization. But so we've been approached by both of the organizations there, and we'll be putting together a bit of a plan. Interestingly, our most recent fire chief that we've hired was in at the town of Saugeen Shores, and he was involved with some of the doctor recruitment over there. So, we've got somebody with some specialization that's already been involved in that type of thing, knows the programs, and nurse practitioners and all those types of things. So we're in good shape for starting ahead on that.
That's great to hear, Ian, because I know that physicians are a huge issue of anxiety for people in the community because I noticed, for example, the hospital is now offering virtual appointments that you can book in if you don't have a doctor, which is kind of intriguing.
Yeah, that's the next thing that's coming, I guess, or the next thing that's here.
It's here, Ian. It's here. And from the physicians I've talked to, they like it very much. It's different, but they find it quite helpful. So we just have to get used to it. That's all.
Yep.
Well, in terms of city quality, I noticed that there was a press release from the city saying the city has a perfect score for drinking water quality. That means that this stuff is pretty good that we get out of our taps?
Yes. Really, as a result of Walkerton, there's a lot more standardized testing for water and for wastewater that's going back into the lake. And we're constantly monitoring and constantly getting reviewed. And we have to file annual reports going to the wastewater side, for example. If we had an overflow in a big storm, we've got to put together that report annually and measure it and take steps to try and reduce that, which we've done a great job on over the last approximately 12 years, and we'll continue to keep going after that. Water's the same thing, and we got a perfect score. Normally you're in high 90s, but there's just something that they'd like you to do a little differently, or some little result. And having 100% is pretty good on that. And it's good for our citizens to know how good their water is and how well the system is operated. It also helps attract a new industry that might need fresh water, for example, that we can go to somebody that's maybe in food manufacturing or something that they need really clean water, really good water. Waive that certificate. It's a real bonus.
Well, I know that having had a tour of the city water and wastewater plants, it's impressive, absolutely mind-blowing when you go through there and you see the technology that is being used both to purify the water, but also on the other side to clean the water that we have used. It's mind-boggling. I think that's the best way to put it. And
well, you're just talking
our staff are expert.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're talking about the equipment and the infrastructure, but the expertise of our staff here in Owen Sound, very low turnover in those departments, and people that take a lot of pride in their jobs. And, that little know-how from working there for years that, the computer can tell them one thing, but they've got, that finite understanding of the system, and they're getting a rainstorm, then they know what's likely to be coming in the water, intake, more sediment, et cetera, and they know what to do sort of hours before the sediment hits the plant. So it's that know-how that's pretty important.
Indeed. And I'll tell you, if they ever do get back to the open houses that we used to have, that if anyone has the opportunity, it's quite the place, quite the interesting experience to go through the water and sewer plants. Now, with a warning, the sewer plant does have a bit of an odor to it in certain parts.
Yeah, it's bound to. Yes,
it's sewage.
Sewage.
But they do their very best, and that's a very, very good thing. Let's go back to where we were on River District, because I think that that one of the themes that I picked up from City Council is that as we come out of COVID, that the city wants to do a little celebrating, and that would of course include events in the River District, but also right across the city, the waterfront, and we've got a waterfront festival coming up, I believe, on the long weekend in July. What's that about?
Well, we're able to get extra grants, and you think about Canada Day, and it's fireworks and a hot dog or a hamburger, and it's sort of it has become somewhat routine. And a year ago, I think you were there at Harrison Park, there was a release of a book, and I can't think the name of it, that talked about new Canadians that are living here and finding a new home. And we have a pretty multicultural community. And so we're thinking about how do we celebrate our heritage, whether it be Indigenous, whether it be our Black history, new Canadians. How do we turn that into much more than hamburgers and hot dogs? You know, the idea of the different foods, the different backgrounds, the different costumes, events, and all those types of things. So we were able to get a grant that will allow us to draw that out over sort of a weekend and turn it into much more of really what Canada is today, and celebrating what we are.
Sure. Well, it sounds like fun. Are we going to get the big rubber duck?
No, I don't think it'll be back probably ever, but there'll be something like that someday in the future, but no, not this year.
Well, I've seen a number of waterfront attractions. The Big Rubber Duck is probably the most recent, but I remember a few years ago there was also a sailing festival. We had a tugboat festival focusing on the tugboat manufacturing that was here. So lots of possibilities and opportunities, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've had the tall ships, we've had the Big Rubber Duck, we've had certainly Tug Fest. That was, I think, here in at Sault Ste. Marie and went back and forth a couple of years. At one point, we had dragon boat races that I think we've still got a team, but we're not hosting them again. Over the last couple of years, we had fun with water. Well, not over the last 2 years, obviously, but before that, for a couple of years, we had some fun down around the Harbor Fest and had some events and things in the harbor that were lots of fun. So we're lucky to have a protected harbor like this that we can use. And with the river precinct being updated all the way up to the market, Kelso Beach, and the Bayshore Community Center, we've got a lot of parkland and area right along the side of the harbor that we can take advantage of.
Well, it certainly will be interesting to see how we develop that parkland and the use of that parkland, because it really is a community gathering spot with the reconciliation garden as well, and all kind. And summer folks going to be coming back then outside as well, will it not?
That's my understanding. Yeah, last year they hosted in different backyards and in small groups, so they're limiting the possibility of the spread of COVID. This year, it's my understanding they hope to go back to Kelso and go back to the fall festival for the 47th Summer Folk.
My golly, imagine! I don't think when Summer Folk was first established, anyone imagined it would still be around 47 or even 50 years later.
I was at that first one, and I remember it very well, going in the Sunday night, and John Harrison letting me in for free. And I saw Tom Rush, and I saw Stan Rogers, and the next year I actually bought Great Big Black Thing, a record Stan Rogers album that I had him sign at the record store, and pretty neat to see how far we've come in all these years.
Oh yes, it's we're both dating ourselves when we talk about vinyl records, aren't we?
Yeah, I was only 4 at the time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, it sounds like we've got a lot of good things to look forward to this summer, and it's quite remarkable that we're able to do this again, and hopefully we will. And COVID will not show its ugly face again, but you never know.
Hottest street sale under the sun will be back. That's another really big event for our community where, we block off Main Street and people get to wander around. So that's coming back, which I think is another big event that we haven't seen for a couple of years.
Sure. That is a lot of fun, and are we also going to see the Sunday night concerts down at the museum?
Yeah, you caught me off guard, and I can't remember if that's getting wrapped up into. I've got to come back to you on that one.
I just got a message from my producer. The answer is yes.
Yes, it was just thinking of a couple of reports that I read, and I couldn't remember what we're doing with them, if we're doing them the same way, but the answer is yes.
Well, in fact, my producer just tells me, thank you, Mark, that they will be on Rogers TV.
Oh, good. We're doing that so people can see them from home as well. That's pretty important for the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure all we've got to do is pay attention and watch for the publicity around the events that are possible now, and looking forward to them.
Yeah, and that'll be coming up soon. Once we get into May, we're starting into May, June, starting into summer, and those events will be starting.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's come back right to the present day, because I noticed that the City Hall has put blue and yellow lights on the front. And you want to mention that?
Just a lot of municipalities and different communities around the world were recognizing the really sad stuff that's going on in Ukraine with Russia invading. And someone asked us if we could put up a Ukrainian flag, and they weren't easy to come by, right off the bat. But we were able to change the color of those lights, which we had set up for this purpose when we put them on, to yellow and blue, to be able to show our support, immediately, and get it up in the front of the building. So that's what the lights were designed for. Use different colors at Christmas, maybe in something like this. So we're pleased to be able to do it.
Well, that's a good sign to see. That's a good sign to see. Now, I don't think we don't have a Ukrainian restaurant in Owen Sound, which would indicate there'd be a Ukrainian population. But I'm quite sure there are people who are second generation Ukrainians here in the city, here in Grey County, and perhaps even people from Russia. We don't know.
When I was much younger, I lived in Edmonton for 9 years, and there is a huge Ukrainian community out there. Shumka dancers are world renowned from Edmonton for continuing the original folk style of dance and passing it down from generation to generation. So I had a lot of Ukrainian friends out there, and learned about pierogies once I got to Edmonton, though I think they call it petahai, or there's a different, they taught me the word in Ukrainian, but unfortunately it's too many years ago. Yeah, wonderful friends, wonderful people, and they've been through that before in in that country, in Poland, very similar next door, and it's you hope that you'd never see this in your lifetime, but here we are again, and here it is for Ukrainian people going through this. Famines in the past, Second World War, Soviet Union, etc. That it's extremely unfortunate, and I hope it comes to an end quickly, and Ukraine gets to get back on its feet.
I think that's a hope we all share, Ian. Thank you. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back because, we got a lot more to talk about, I can assure you. Friends, I'm David Shearman. This is Politically Speaking. We'll be right back.
This program is brought to you by NHL Center Ice. Follow the teams and players you want to watch no matter where they play. NHL Center Ice is part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack.
My name is Matthew Rutledge. I'm a 60 scoop survivor, born in Red Lake. Was adopted from there to Toronto at the age of 4. A lot of our brothers and sisters, family members got separated from each other. That was the government's goal, to break that connection from brothers and sisters. Basically taking the Indian out of the child. Right now, they're still trying to find themselves. Originally, my birth name is Harvey Halverson. In my high school days, teens, I was trying to fit into society. I knew I was First Nations, but I didn't know who I was inside. I think later in life, I started that journey. I am proud, Anishinaabe man, who I am now. I love life, who I am.
October 5th, 2014, my daughter was hit by a train. She was walking along the sides of the tracks, and it shattered her world.
The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, and welcome back to Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. My guest is Ian Boddy, the mayor of Owen Sound, and we've been talking about all kinds of neat things about what's happening this summer, about changes, about, well, the city acknowledging the situation in the Ukraine, but there's a lot more going on in Owen Sound. You know that, as so do I, and so let's talk to Ian about, well, let's start off with something that I think has been a part of my experience in Owen Sound almost since I moved here, and that's the jail. And once again, the jail has been sold. Now, what's the story there, Ian?
Well, the jail, of course, was built in the 1800s, and I can't remember the exact year, but it was the county court building, or the county building. So it signified Owen Sound as being the seat of the county, and certainly was a big part of the development of the city. So the building is pretty important symbolically. The architecture of it, when you look at that roof line and the stone building, is pretty amazing. And we've been trying to find the perfect fit. And it's not about selling it for profit or money, recognizing that whoever buys it is going to spend millions in capital to get it up to current standard or modern building standards. So we'd sold it to Southbridge a few years ago for long-term care, and once they really got into it, it wasn't going to work for them. Had several people kick at the tires a few times, but we've got someone that has come along, Nick Yanis from Toronto. He has done historic buildings before and refurbished them, and in Toronto turned them into condos. So it's somebody that's got experience that type of building, loves, really attached to that type of building. And we passed at the last meeting that we will proceed to sell the building to him. There are markers going forward that he's got to proceed in a certain period of time, and if he doesn't get there, then we've got the option of taking the building back, given its historic importance. So he's talking about putting in sort of wedding restaurant facilities and making it a really special place. So I think this is a win-win for everybody.
That sounds very, very exciting, Ian. And I have seen what people can do with these repurposed industrial buildings. Now, this isn't an industrial building, obviously, but I know of a down in Kitchener, Kitchener-Waterloo, there are a number of old warehouses that have been repurposed as wedding venues. And they are incredibly well done. And hey, you can have quite the shindig in a place like that. And so if he can do something with this, that's great. Looking forward to seeing it, and hey, perhaps even eating there if it's going to be a restaurant. Something I think we'll all be watching very, very carefully. Did you tell him about the ghosts?
I don't know anything about ghosts, no.
Oh, okay. Just
So actually on the CBC Ontario Mornings this morning talking about it, and talked about, that neighborhood. More Third Avenue needs a little bit of love. Where Fourth Avenue especially has got some beautiful red brick houses and some really neat flat top townhouses. And not everyone wants to invest perhaps in refurbishing things when you're in the neighborhood of a jail. However, with this, I can see where this is going to really pick up the neighborhood. And It is a neighborhood that I think, especially 4th Avenue, 3rd Avenue's got a lot of traffic, but it's a really special neighborhood. If you walk down there and look at some of the architecture and the brickwork and the buildings and even the way Barry has redone the old Strathcona School, I think this is going to be, I think it's a neat neighborhood now. I think having this turning from a jail and an empty building into this use is going to be really positive for that part of town.
Yes, it should be quite attractive once it's done, if it's done in the right way, and I'm sure the city will ensure that. It's an interesting property because there's the jail, there's the governor's house, the jail governor's house, there's the courthouse, there's the yard, and then there's the old registry office, which is out on I guess on 4th Ave, and Stan Brown Printers was there for years.
Yeah, it's a separate piece of property. It's not owned by the city, not part of this transaction.
So the registry property is separate. Okay, well, let's hope someday that'll get a little love as well, because I remember when Stan Brown Printers was there, and interesting building inside.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building too, isn't it, when you look at the structure of it?
Yes. Now, the one thing I've always wondered about the courthouse is that in many Ontario cities, the courthouse is fronted or surrounded by a park. I think of Goderich, I think of Peterborough as good examples of that. But somehow we didn't get a park, and I don't know why. But I wish I could go back 150 years and say, hey, put a park there.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know why that is. Yeah, there's houses all around it that must have been built soon after.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they would have been built before. Yeah, interesting. I don't know.
Well, one of those what ifs that never came to be. But anyway, speaking of property and sales and so on, you have, I've noticed going through the city council minutes, there are 2 developments that have already made it through, and then there's been a 3rd residential development just announced, actually made public as we speak. The first 2 are the one on 28th Street West, the apartment that Barry's Construction has applied and received permission to build. 6 4-story buildings on the BCK property for 224 units. And that's going to be very interesting because that's been a prime piece of property that's sat vacant for years.
Well, I think I've maybe said this already. I can't remember which conversation I've had because I was at a police board meeting before this. There's approximately 400 units that will come into onto the market in the coming months. And then we've got, I think it's 97 units of 28th Street. The ones at Black Claws and Kennedy, and I talked to the owner several years ago of that property that said, where else can I buy a city, a entire block, an established city right downtown and be able to do something with it? So he's been waiting and looking forward to this for a long time. The property, the old RCA property down the East Harbor has changed hands and gone to Skyline, and they have announced what they're going to do with it. About a year ago, Collingwood put a freeze in all development because they didn't have the water or wastewater infrastructure to be able to support further growth, and then they've had significant growth over the last number of years. I looked at that as being an opportunity and sent out personalized letters to about 30 property holders, either vacant land holders or developers or big commercial property holders, known sound that were already here, telling them that our wastewater and our water system is built out in the 60s for a lot more growth than what we have now, and that we've got capacity for that. We've got, we're basically ready, willing, and able to work with them and get this developed. And immediately got a phone call back from Skyline saying, we've never really received a letter like this, but we're interested. Can you set us up with property, help us find property? So we did a couple of different options that we suggested to them, and this one worked. There is another response to that letter that is not public at this point, and we'll wait until the property owner decides when they want to make it public. But there's some good things going on. We know about Flatto across the street from the hospital that's looking forward to moving forward. Barry's bought the Braymont property to the east of the hospital on 8th Street on the north side. There's footings in the ground and I think framing going up on 9th Avenue and about 22nd Street on the east side of the road across from the Odawa Owen Sound Housing Tower there. So we're finally getting the housing that we want, and this gives us a great opportunity to start to attract some industry that we've got the housing for the labor. Of course, the other side of the story is attracting the labor to fill those jobs as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're starting to see it. We're starting to move that forward. And, I think we have to be real. I hope we can be realistic to recognize that might be a year, 2, 3, 4 before we start to see maturity in those developments. But as you said, there's ground already being broken and buildings going up.
Well, and just to go through the process. So somebody buys a piece of property they want to develop. They put in their pre-circulation plan. So this is confidential. It goes into City Hall and they get the opinion from Conservation Authority, Niagara Escarpment, Bell Telephone, Electrical, Plumbing, Sewing, the engineering department. What can we put in that piece of property? Does it pass? And they'll get suggestions back that allows them to put it into their actual application for a site plan. And it saves them time instead of putting it in and having to make changes, that they're ready to go when they put in the site plan. City staff are pretty quick. I'm hearing a year and a half in other cities down south to get their site plan approved. We're doing it in weeks to months in Owen Sound. Now, if we get too many starting going forward, well, it'll slow us down, but we're still far ahead of so many municipalities down south for getting things through the planning department. Then they've got a site plan. Then they want to put together their engineers and their architects to start to design the building. They will go out and get their financing. So this all takes a couple of years before the shovel ever hits the ground as they plan their engineering, they plan their water, their wastewater, their streets, their curbs, all those things. So, people often think when the site plan's in good, we're going to see them starting to build tomorrow, but it isn't quite that quick. I think probably if you talk to Peter Van Doler at ANPAT, who's putting in the 128-unit seniors apartments, what that be in behind Eastside Mario's or up around Meridian Bank, and then he's putting in I think 47 townhouses and about 27 duplexes, all on the level. From start to now, it's probably been 2.5, maybe even 3 years as he's, the process takes that long. And that's not unreasonable delay. It's not, someone will criticize that the city is holding them up. That isn't holding them up. And every builder will tell you that it's pretty easy to get things done in Owen Sound, and they like working with our staff. But, from the time that they get that site plan that goes quickly, it still takes a period of time to get all the wheels going in the right direction and start to put the shovel on the ground. So,
well, I recall reading the provincial government task force report on housing that came out earlier this year. And when you read that report, you begin to realize the kind of things, and now you have to remember this was a provincial report, the kind of stumbling blocks that developers have, one of which I was interested to read was financing, that there's some pretty high financing required, and the government would like to change some of those rules.
Yeah, quite naturally. They're spending millions of dollars, and they need to be able to finance it. And that's always a challenge. City Hall a few years ago, our engineering department was up at the Public Works building. And so if you went in with an application, you took it into City Hall, you talked to planning there, you had to go up and talk to engineering up at the the Works Department come back down to planning. And so with the new refurbished City Hall, the engineers and the planners are all in the same area, and they're all talking to each other, and they can lift their head from their desk and yell over the wall in some cases to, what's going on with this or that. So when a developer comes in, we try and sit them down immediately with the development team, city manager and head of engineering and head of planning, and certainly Brent will be there to talk about, marketing and all those types of things of how we can help. So, there's a whole team that meets with the developers when they come in to kickstart everything, and so everyone knows what's going on or on the same page, and it's certainly helped make things go a little more smoothly than perhaps they did 10 years ago.
Do you anticipate that increased housing will result in increased needs for within the city itself? I'm thinking of staffing. I'm thinking of additional services, or is that kind of a horse and cart discussion?
Well, in the 60s, I've been told we're just rechecking those numbers to make sure they're accurate. But I was told the water and wastewater was built out for about 45,000 people. So other than, going into specific neighborhoods, that isn't a big expense. We've got schools that are supposed to have capacity, although changes a couple of years ago, the decisions that they made. Our fire department is built out for growth. We're able to do that. They were built out for when PPG had, big gas furnaces in there and had capacity to fight fires in a big industrial site that they won't necessarily have now in the same way. Library certainly has capacity. Arenas with the new rec center was designed for a larger population that we have now. So yeah, we've got the capacity. Buses would have to go in a different route and have to go a little bit further. But there's people that will point out in Toronto that every time they expand, they need a school, they need roads. There's an awful lot of infrastructure that they have to do to facilitate the expansion. Here, we're prepaid. We've already done the facilitation, and we've been waiting for that growth. So, now's the time to attract the growth. We're ready for it.
It sounds like we're in for an exciting, dare I say it, next term of council.
Yeah, I think so.
And speaking of next term of council, we've got a municipal election upcoming. And I know in other shows with other elected officials, we've talked a bit about the process. And I presume our city clerk has got the process well in hand.
Yeah, the clerks start off about a year and a half in advance. And I think we got our second update on election preparation from them. How it's going to be operated and staffed and all those things. I know we changed the sign bylaw a couple of months ago at one of the committees to corporate services, I guess, committee to look at the number of signs that people can put up in size and things. So their staffing is moving towards the election.
That's great. That's great. Because this is a multiple election year, of course, because the provincial election in June and the municipal election in late October. And it does look like, seeing as we're talking about elections, there probably won't be a federal election within the next year or two, dare I say it?
Yeah, luckily. So municipal election, I think it's May 2nd, somewhere at the start of May that we can start to file to run for municipal. The election is, I believe, October 24th or 27th. Instead of the government turning over the municipality, the council turning over on December 1st, they backed that up to mid-November. With the provincial election running through to Thursday, I believe it's the 4th or the 6th of June. I doubt you'll see, well, we'll see. I was going to say, I doubt you'll see a lot of people announcing that they're running for council until after that. From my point of view, I just want to stay out of the way of the province until after.
Yeah, that's probably what a lot of us would like to do. Just stay out of the way and just watch and then vote, of course.
Yeah.
Now, with all of this going on at the local level, there's all kinds of, I mean, I know there's all kinds of stuff happening elsewhere, but I did want to ask you about something I noticed that Gray and Bruce are going to get together for the Good Roads Conference to make a presentation to I think it's the Minister of Infrastructure around rural transportation. Can you tell us a bit about that, Ian?
Well, as you know, we got funding at the city to run the bus service. It was originally suggested that we go on Sound to London, but I thought it made more sense to go on Sound to Guelph because Guelph's got connections into Toronto, Hamilton, London, between GO trains and buses. So we've got the GHOST, G-O-S-T, which is Guelph Owen Sound Transportation, runs up and down Highway 6. The county got funding to run within the county and into Bruce County, and there was already bus services set up in more southerly, I believe, Bruce County. So it'd be nice to be able to get provincial funding, continual, reliable provincial funding to keep this regional transit system going, to allow people to, maybe they live in Meaford and want to work at Blue Mountain Village, or they're living in Owen Sound and need to get to Chapman's in Markdale, or interestingly enough, we were talking to Hydrogen Optimized. A number of those people live over in Collingwood. Some of the engineers live over in Collingwood, town of Blue Mountains area, and asked if the county could run the bus a half an hour earlier, coming from over there over to here, and they were getting onto the bus and using it to get to work, so they didn't all have to drive, and it was better than carpooling. So I think that's the type of thing that the county and the twin counties will be talking about.
Now, when is the Good Roads Conference happening? Is it mid-April?
It's mid-April. I'm going to go to the Canadian Nuclear Association conference, which I think is 12, 13, 14. And so Good Roads, even when it was in February, both of them got put off to about the same time in April. So Good Roads will be about 10, 11, 12, 13 April, somewhere in there.
Right. And will you be the only member of council going, or will obviously the warden will be going, but Deputy Mayor O'Leary as well?
Well, I believe Deputy Mayor O'Leary, Councillor Dodd, and Councillor Thomas are going to Good Roads. I won't be going to it because of the overlap with the Canadian Nuclear Association conferences. We go and think about economic development and taking advantage of that clean energy frontier in Great Bruce, Huron, and take advantage of our industrial facilities and capacity. So we're going. I decided not to go to Good Roads this time when others are going, and can come back with good notes and focus on something a little bit different. Oh, there we go.
Just to explain what's going on is one of the downsides sometimes is that we lose connection. And I suspect it's the either cosmic rays or the evil telecommunications gremlins. I did pay my bill for Rogers today, so. But anyway, I was saying, Ian, that these conferences are working conferences. It's not a holiday. These are very much working conferences.
Correct. It's for something like Good Roads, AMO. Roma, rural Ontario municipalities, there's sessions going, several sessions going every hour to try and pick out stuff and learn. And I think of AMO a few years ago, what I learned about garbage and environmental stuff, because that seemed to be the theme that year. For me, going to the nuclear one, there'll be lots to learn, but it's also meeting, Bruce power suppliers and learning about isotopes and opportunities. So, we're all going to benefit our community as much as we can. And there won't be a lot of downtime sitting around.
And just to be clear, it does make a difference if you can turn around and look somebody in the eye or recognize when a proposal comes across your desk. Oh, yeah, I met them there.
Well, we have 4 or 5 suppliers to Bruce Power already that are here, and we never get a chance to meet with them and say, how are we doing? How are you doing? You know, what can we do to help? Can we change anything? What do we need to do? So this is certainly an opportunity for that, and you know, maybe they'll tell us of they want to expand, but we need this or we need that, and you know, just being able to keep those relationships going is especially with industrial that's providing jobs, is pretty important.
And especially that's an important job for the mayor as sort of the, dare I say it, the chief PR person for the city.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can always tell them, we have good water.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not sure that applies so much to nuclear, but you know, if you're going to meet with somebody else, these are the type of events where we rub elbows with people and try and get them to look at Owen Sound ahead of somewhere else.
Sure. And so we've got about 3-4 minutes left. I wanted to ask you if there was anything you wanted to lift up this more today.
No, I was relying on the list that you sent out, and can't really think of anything. Nuclear, hydrogen, clean energy frontier.
Well, let me
hockey
ask.
Team doing well, and I think that's great for the community.
Yes, and we're back into watching hockey.
Off their minds. Yeah.
Yes, we're back to watching the attack here on Rogers TV. So
River Precinct, of course, River Precinct. We did 8th Street to 9th Street on the east side. We'll work towards updating that next block from 9th Street to 10th Street along the back of the stores again on the east side. That'll be coming up. Gee, you know, once I always tease people that at 2 o'clock in the morning when I start to think of things that I'll give you a call. But no doubt once we're off the air, I'll come up with 3 things that I should have mentioned.
Well, I should tell you, a sure sign of spring. I was driving past the boat launch on Monday, and I counted at least 20 cars and trailers at the boat launch. So spring is here.
There we go. There's what you've keyed on. Springtime means potholes. We've rented a special machine. They went out and patched something like 200 potholes in one day around the city. So if you see potholes that need patched, need to be filled, please phone City Hall and tell us about them. And, you know, staff are out there filling those all the time, and we're getting to them a little sooner. With the freezing and thawing this winter, things changing, we got more potholes probably than usual, a little bit earlier than usual. That means spring.
And very quickly, I'll compliment the city because I discovered I've got a street light out. And I just called the city, but the staff person called me back and said, this should be fixed in this time frame. It's on the worksheet, so we'll get it done. Much appreciated, Ian.
Good.
And now that we're just about out of time, I want to thank you for showing up and joining me on Politically Speaking, and I'm sure we will talk again.
Look forward to the next time. Thank you.
And thank you, friends, for being a part of Politically Speaking. I'm David Shearman. We'll talk again.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Calling all journalism students, Omni Television is once again awarding scholarships